They vanished from a home on Gearlock Road, and what followed was a pattern of quiet answers, louder silences, and questions that keep widening instead of closing. Hit subscribe and ring the bell now for first-hand updates on this case and others. Every development shifts what we know, and this story is still unfolding. May 2nd, 2025, 10 a.m., the 911 call that changed everything. That timestamp is the hinge of the investigation, the precise moment the household's ordinary rhythm shifted into emergency. In missing person work, the first hours are everything. Who was in the house, who left, and when, who might have seen something, which doors were open, whether phones pinged nearby towers, and whether any cameras captured movement. From the second the call was logged, two parallel processes began. A public, high-energy search that would mobilize volunteers, drones, and patrols across thick rural terrain, and a quieter, methodical criminal inquiry that would gather devices, clothing, statements, and anything that might later be tested in a lab. Those two tracks often compete for resources and attention. Community volunteers cover more ground faster, but wide, uncoordinated sweeps can contaminate fragile evidence. Investigators, meanwhile, race against time to lock down scenes and collect perishable traces before weather or foot traffic destroys them. The Gearlock Road call set all of that into motion. Neighbors joined searches, social feeds lit up, and RCMP teams began both the visible search grid and the behind-the-scenes work to secure devices and testimonies. That same 10 a.m. timestamp is now the centerpiece investigators use to anchor timelines, cross-reference footage, and trace digital movement. It's the moment forensic clocks start ticking. Observers have repeatedly noted the mother's public composure after that call, describing Malia Brooks-Murray as calm, measured, and at times almost mechanical in interviews and on social media. Human responses to acute trauma vary widely. Shock, numbing, dissociation, hypervigilance, and behavior experts caution against quick moral judgments based solely on demeanor. Yet investigators treat behavioral patterns as data to be tested. They examine the timing of statements, compare declared recollections with phone logs, and check social posts against device metadata. In this case, Malia's measured public presence was joined by a set of digital actions that drew scrutiny, reportedly changing relationship status and deleting family photos soon after the children were reported missing. To some, that looked like cold calculation. To others, a privacy reaction or an attempt to avoid harassment. For investigators, the deleted content is recoverable data. Backups, cached images, and service providers can often yield material thought removed. Those actions become investigatory threads, not proof of guilt, but avenues for corroboration. Whether her social behavior reflects coping, anxiety about online harassment, or something more incriminating is precisely the kind of question the RCMP must answer through technical forensics rather than intuition. The social media edits, removing photos and altering relationship markers, intensified public curiosity and suspicion. When families are thrust into national attention, their digital fingerprints become immediate evidence. Deletions that might once have been private are now public events. Investigators routinely reconstruct timelines using social platforms. When a photo was posted, who liked it, when a status changed, and whether messages were sent or deleted. Those moves don't exist in a vacuum. They intersect with other inquiries such as call logs, bank records, and travel data. The timing of these deletions, occurring shortly after the disappearance, raised questions about motive and intent in some quarters. But context matters. Removing photos can be an attempt to protect children's images from speculation, to stop harassing comments, or simply an emotional reaction. Until metadata and corroboration are examined, such actions remain suspicious only in the court of public opinion. In the laboratory of investigation, they are neutral evidence to be verified. The stepfather, Daniel Mardell, emerged as a contested figure early on. Investigators documented and tested his statements, noting contradictions and details he seemed to know that others did not. People close to an investigation often produce shifting accounts, memory fractures, stress-driven omissions, or deliberate alterations, all of which investigators must sort. Daniel's willingness to submit to a polygraph and to give his phone to police was publicized as proof of cooperation. Polygraphs, however, are not determinative in court and are best treated as investigative tools to prioritize lines of inquiry. More telling for detectives are contradictions that can be checked against objective records, timestamps on surveillance footage, GPS trails, receipts, and other people's statements. When a witness or relative offers a sequence of events that later conflicts with recovered digital traces, investigators re-interview and probe for motive and opportunity. That process has a twofold goal: to either reconcile human fallibility with the physical record or to isolate discrepancies that point toward deception. Daniel's statements, and how they line up with footage, phone records, and other witnesses, are therefore central to moving from suspicion to actionable leads. One of the clearest documentary anchors investigators have is RCMP footage showing the children in New Glasgow on May 1st. That image matters because it establishes a recent, verifiable location for the pair prior to the May 2nd disappearance, anchoring the timeline and offering investigators a starting point for movement analysis: who they were with, where they went afterward, and whether anyone connected to those movements shows suspicious behavior in the metadata. Video is blunt and useful evidence. Timestamps, camera angles, and corroborating witnesses can either confirm someone's account or contradict it. But footage must be integrated with other traces, phone pings, fuel purchases, and witness statements to build a full picture. Investigators use such anchors to rule out possibilities and to test alibis. That New Glasgow frame is a small but crucial piece of the broader mosaic. Massive searches by volunteers and police followed, covering difficult terrain, wetlands, and pipeline corridors. Despite scale and commitment, those sweeps produced no confirmed trace of the children, and by May 19th, the initial large-scale search posture was scaled back. Early search strategy involves both breadth and control. Volunteers can cover large areas, but uncontrolled movement may trample footprints, disperse scent, and move lightweight items. Weather and geography also conspire against preservation. Rain will blur prints and shift small items, and steep banks can hide or shift evidence. Investigators typically pivot from broad rescue operations into targeted, forensics-driven inquiries when initial sweeps offer no survivor indications. That transition is operationally sensible but emotionally wrenching for families and communities. The visible, hopeful mass searches give way to quieter, slower lab work and targeted warrants. As the investigation advanced, the RCMP escalated the file to their major crime unit and began treating the disappearance as a probable homicide. An escalation to major crime reflects a formal recalibration. Specialized detectives, forensic units, and digital evidence teams take over and pursue warrants, file subpoenas, and coordinate cross-jurisdictional searches. It signals that investigators view the evidence as pointing away from a simple missing child scenario and toward deliberate concealment or foul play. That is not the same as public criminal charge, but it does imply significant concern among investigators about the possibility of intentional actions to remove the children or to obscure their whereabouts. That shift also changes investigative cadence: more sealed hearings, targeted interviews, and legal steps to preserve and obtain data follow, and public disclosures become more measured to protect prosecutorial integrity. Community reaction hardened as details emerged and uncertainties persisted. Indigenous leaders and other local figures, in some reported instances, withheld public support for Malia and expressed concern about the evolving narrative and handling of community relations. Public trust is fragile in missing person cases. Allegations, social media gossip, and distrust of authorities can erode cooperative relationships that investigators need. The way community leaders position themselves affects witness willingness to come forward and can either encourage tips or drive them underground. Social media amplifies every grievance and rumor, and that amplification circulates in ways that complicate the investigative environment and the family's ability to grieve privately. Community cohesion matters because cooperation often produces the small, overlooked details: a car seen on a bridge, a light flashing at a late hour, a conversation recalled after pressure mounts, that help investigators fold the narrative together. Critical gaps remain in the record: missing medical records, an unaccounted 72-hour window after the last confirmed sightings, and unresolved lists of attendees at an alleged gathering near the time in question. Those gaps are the raw material of both investigative leads and public speculation. Investigators are focusing on reconstructing the 72 hours, subpoenaing records, obtaining phone metadata, and seeking corroboration from independent witnesses to fill that void. Missing medical records can be subpoenaed and recovered. Phone metadata and CCTV canvases can backfill timelines, and interview follow-ups can compel clarification of who is where and when. The quality of modern investigations often hinges on the thorough retrieval and cross-checking of digital footprints, text threads, app location services, banking transactions, each of which can anchor or blow apart narratives offered by witnesses. Public tips have reportedly exceeded 180, and police have seized phones, bank data, and geolocation records from people of interest. In modern major crime work, digital evidence is the backbone of reconstruction. Cell tower pings, phone app logs, payment histories, and travel records can place a person's device near an area at a given time, corroborate or refute statements, and sometimes reveal previously unknown contacts. Seizing such data requires legal process, and investigators must handle it carefully to preserve chain of custody and admissibility. The heavy volume of tips is useful, but creates a triage problem. Investigators must evaluate credibility, prioritize leads with corroborative potential, and avoid confirmation bias. That said, even a single dashcam clip or a discarded image can pivot an investigation when it ties to other verified traces. Taken together, these elements produce a set of hard takeaways. First, parental behavior. The silences, deletions, and contradictions is central to investigators' lines of inquiry, but manner alone does not equal guilt. It warrants intense scrutiny paired with forensic corroboration. Second, the earliest 72 hours are critical in missing child cases, and missteps or uncontrolled volunteer activity in that window can destroy evidentiary value and complicate later forensic analysis. Third, community distrust and social media dynamics heavily influence public perception and can either help or hinder investigators. Responsible tip submission is vital. Fourth, the RCMP's elevation of this file to major crime signals strong suspicion of foul play and brings specialized resources to bear. Finally, transparency where feasible, renewed targeted searches driven by verified leads, and meticulous forensic follow-up remain essential to achieving justice and clarity. This case remains active and unresolved. The path forward is methodical. Forensic labs must return results on seized items, digital records must be parsed, witness statements must be reconciled with objective anchors like video and GPS, and targeted searches must proceed when new, verifiable leads appear. For the public, the most constructive course is to preserve any evidence you might have intact and pass it to investigators rather than amplify speculation. For the family and community, patience and pressure must be balanced. Demand answers, but insist those answers be built on proof. Hold space for 2 missing children, and hold the expectation that truth requires care. We will keep reporting verified developments as investigators confirm them. If you have credible, specific information, dashcam footage, relevant messages, or location data, give it to the RCMP Major Crime Unit handling this file. Small details, properly verified, can change the entire course of a case. Justice depends on exactness, not volume of conjecture, and 2 families deserve no less than the full rigor of the process.